All right, guys, how's it going?
All good, all good. Guys, welcome back to Devil's Advocate. This is a special show. My laptop's being shit, so I can. So, obviously, this is Devil's Advocate on the Weekly Armchair, joined by a special guest live from the US. It is Phil from Beyond the Pitch, Malakans. If you've not got his Twitter, if you don't, there's something definitely wrong with you. But, of course, it's a pleasure. This man is a real treat. And he wears an Imperial man. This guy has fashion sense. Not just football sense, he's got fashion sense. How are we, gentlemen?
Oh, good, lads. Thanks for having me on.
Keane's well chuffed. I wonder why.
Could
it be that Bruno Fernandes has a number 8 shirt?
It could be. We'll discuss that. But yeah, happy about that.
Absolutely. And just a wee heads up, there's already 17 people watching and we've only just started. So thanks to everyone that is watching. Please hit that like, share and subscribe buttons. We really do appreciate it. Go and give Phil's channel a subscribe as well, Beyond the Pitch. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you,
and of course, don't bother with my channel. It's just gaming stuff. It's completely irrelevant. What's relevant is this. What's completely relevant is obviously Man United, carnage. If you're into transfers, it's been carnage. If you're only interested in the football, good. Your sanity will remain. And of course, I agree with what Mark says. Get your comments and questions in, guys, because all of it tonight is just going to be fun, and we're going to be here for the next hour. Unless you're Keane, who's more interested in Love Island. I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding. Good evening, Alex, and of course, he is looking forward to Phil, which is buzzing. Mark's in here, and Pandas, eh? Awesome. We'll definitely keep you on. Tonight is just going to be a firing show. There's now 37 people watching, so keep at it, folks. Keep at it. We may as well start with the big one, lads. Ronaldo. Situation is a clouded one. Depends on your point of view. Is it a pressure on the Glazers? Does Ronaldo generally want to leave? I'll be honest with you, I've barely paid attention to it. I've not been on social media a lot, and I've already gave my point of view on it slightly a couple of days ago to Keane, but with Ronaldo, if he goes, stays, I personally don't care. I've seen him leave before, and I've seen players come and go, so it's normal to me. But just from a different perspective, I've already heard Keane's, so I just wanted to get your perspective on this one, Phil, like the whole Ronaldo situation. What's your point of view on this one?
It's bizarre to me. I really don't understand how it benefits Ronaldo for this to go public. I mean, because put enormous pressure now on George Mendes to get an offer for Cristiano Ronaldo. That's his job. It's not Man United's job to get an offer for Cristiano Ronaldo. And it has to be a top club in order to accommodate Ronaldo to fulfill his alleged reasons for wanting to leave, to go to a Champions League winning team, a potential team that's in the Champions League potentially win it. That's the only reason why you would go. What team capable of winning the Champions League want to bring in a 38-year-old striker who don't have someone already in that position? And if you bring him in, he has to play every week. He's not willing to accept not playing every week at United. So I really think there's more to this than the nonsense. They're going to use this, the United fans' anger about transfers to their advantage. They're going to use this other disappointment when I get alleged ambition and all that nonsense. It's total nonsense. Cristiano Ronaldo gave an interview 4 weeks ago, which was a complete contradiction to everything that has come out today or a few days ago through Duncan Castles. And what happens if no top club comes in for him? Now Cristiano Ronaldo has to do a massive climb down, and it's a reflection of where he's at. I don't think he's getting a better football club than the one he's at, to be honest. I think he has to also face facts that he's 38 years of age and there's no top clubs in Europe that are going to sign him and make him the focal point of their attack. So I don't understand why he did this. If you do it in private, you don't get the move. You don't have to do the climb down. If it doesn't happen, but now it has to happen.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from on that perspective. There's a couple of questions in here. We'll come back to that in a minute. But Keane, before we come into the live chat, because there's another question there regarding somebody else, which we'll come to later on. I know we've spoken about it briefly at the weekend, but just your general thoughts on Ronaldo. Like, I'll put it to you this way. Can you be, like, because you know me, like, it's just straight to the point, I'm blunt, but I have to put it in the way I feel comfortable with. Can you be arsed with it? Just general perspective. You know me, mate, I'm blunt, I'm straight, I have to go the way I feel most comfortable.
like I'll be honest, it's come out of the blue, and again, like I kind of go back to what Phil said. Like Ronaldo said, like 4 weeks ago, or like 6 weeks ago, that like he wanted to stay at the football club,
Yeah.
and like he said, like look back the new manager. So it's a contradiction, obviously, to what Ronaldo said. Obviously, at the end of the season, he was excited, about the new regime coming in, Erik ten Hag. Now I see people question ambition. I initially questioned it myself, but
Yeah.
when you look at this situation, like Phil's absolutely right. If you look at where he can go after this, realistically, Bayern Munich, they're not going to pay the astronomical wages that Cristiano Ronaldo will want. They've just brought in Sadio Mane. You look at like Juventus, they've already brought in Vlahovic, like they're 6 months ago. They're not going to bring him back. Real Madrid have Benzema, De Vinicius, players like that. Rodrigo, young player as well. Like Real Madrid's not an option. Barcelona are just financially, they're in a really bad situation as well. Like he can't go there. When you actually break it down, maybe Chelsea, like I know there's talk about Chelsea, and we'll talk about that in a minute. They're probably the only club realistically, if you look at number 9, they need a striker because Lukaku left. But when you look at the rest of the clubs, there's not really like an option for him to go and like win the Champions League at this stage of his career. And the thing about this is, and this is what really bugs me, is like when he came back, he got so much love from the fans, and like look, it was brilliant to see Ronaldo effectively come home last year. Now, if he does want to leave and he does kick up a fuss, this could, in my opinion, tarnish his legacy slightly at the club, because like he's leaving at a time where we're in a process where we are rebuilding, and you could say, like, you can play devil's advocate and say long term in the rebuild process, is Ronaldo part of that rebuild realistically? Like long term, probably not. But this season, when we lack a striker, like realistically, we've Anthony Martial there, who has had his trouble with injury in the last 2 years. We can't trust him to play a full season. Rashford's not a striker. Obviously Cavani's left the club. We know there's another situation going on as well. When you look at that, you only have young Charlie McNeil left as a natural striker below that at the football club.
Yeah.
So like I think for Cristiano Ronaldo, for him to want to leave now and say this now in the first week of July, it's one of them where there has to be something else behind it, in that respect. There has to be something else there, because he knew back in March, April, we weren't finishing in the top 4. So it's one of them where, like, even if he stays this season and he gets United back into the top 4, and let's say, like, one trophy, I know he doesn't want to play in the Europa League, but that's one trophy he's never won in his career. He could complete the set. He can literally complete the set of every trophy conceivably to be won.
Yeah.
So it's one of them where just doesn't make sense at the moment. Like,
I think it's far more likely it has to do with one of 3 things. I think it has to do with the fact that he was either told he wasn't going to be getting a captaincy. He may have been told he's not going to start every week in Ten Hag's team. Or it has to do with the fact that he wasn't expecting to get that 25% reduction because he doesn't feel part of the failure. I think it's far more likely it's one of those 3 things than it has to do with things that he knew months ago that weren't an issue a month ago. If these are issues, fine. No one's arguing that. No one's arguing that the Glazers, their ambition, needs to be questioned. One of the things United have to be really careful of this summer, when you look at how United have wasted money in the past, they've done stupid things. Like how you waste $1 billion is by not signing your first choice player, then blowing 3/4 of that budget on a player you don't want. That doesn't work. It would have been cheaper to buy the player you want. And this is where, like, if they don't get De Jong and then they go spend 65 million on a player they don't really want as an alternative, that's how you waste 65 million when it would have cost you 85 to get De Jong. That's how you get to spend $1 billion with nothing to show for it, and while City do. It's it's essentially a lottery winner and a billionaire. One person spending it all on pound stretcher and not knowing what they have to show for it, and someone else investing it. There's a massive difference. and so because the person investing it can afford to lose it. So I think for me, I think it's far more likely it's one of those three issues. But like I said, now there's enormous pressure on Cristiano Ronaldo. Here's the thing: it made sense for Ronaldo to come back to Manchester United because his past, everything else. It didn't really make sense for Ronaldo to go anywhere else from Juventus, And now you're saying to yourself, it's not just bringing Ronaldo into your football club, it's bringing Ronaldo into your dressing room. It's accommodating a massive ego. It's accommodating massive wages. It's accommodating the guy that everybody else has to play through. It changes the dynamic of your dressing room. And the cost benefit of that today with Ronaldo, is it really worth it? When people say, where would United be without Ronaldo's goals? Where would United be without David De Gea? I mean, there'd be another goalkeeper in there, presumably making similar saves. There'd be another striker in there. Cristiano Ronaldo was in there, presumably scoring goals. So to me, I think that's a silly question. And I think you're right. It's not 2009. Most people won't shed many tears if he goes, and probably for United to continue the revolution to a real football club, he has to go.
Yeah, I was more touching on the back of that. I was more at pain in 2009, considering in that team we had Van der Sar in goal, we had Fernand and Vidic at centre back, you had Carrick coming into the fold as his own as a midfielder, you had Paul Scholes still delivering unbelievable performances in the league and also in the Champions League. You had Wayne Rooney, arguably his best or about to hit his best. You had Nani coming into his fold. You had Berbatov. You had, depending on what could have happened, you had Carlos Tevez before he snaked us. That's a very core dynamic of both defensive and attacking players. And then obviously then we replaced them with a has-been in Michael Owen. I'm always going to say it. Valencia, who was a good servant, but he wasn't that level. And then you bring in Gabriel Obertan. There's no...
That was Glazer. That was the Glazer-nomics.
Exactly. And that's the reflection
it was the Glazer-nomics, but it was also 2009 when the economy crashed, when there was massive... And this is where United are in this very similar situation today, where they can't borrow money because the cost of that money goes up. Look, United needs soldiers, okay? If Cristiano Ronaldo is 23, 24 and wants to walk out of the football club because of ambition, fine. But if you aren't willing to give the football club that gave you everything a year, bear in mind, Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't a world-class player for the first 4 or 5 years he came to Manchester United. Manchester United nursed him into that football player. So maybe he can give a year back to the football club that they gave to him. 1 year, soldiers, they need people on that pitch that care enough beyond what's on the back of the shirt, what's on the front of the shirt. So if Ronaldo wants to leave because of these reasons, that's fine. Just get him out, right? This is Ten Hag needs to get him out now. And I would honestly put this back on Ronaldo. I would not let him train with the club. I would fine him. And I would say, go tell your agent to get us a top offer. We can put the onus on him, because I don't think those offers are out there.
Yeah.
I don't think, selling the Cristiano effect, Manchester United's commercial revenue hasn't grown in 4 years. Right? What is Cristiano worth commercially at Chelsea that he's not at Manchester United? If he can't, Manchester United commercially with Ronaldo is massive because it's the obvious fairy tale, but Chelsea,
there isn't anything
how much
there.
is Messi worth at PSG? That hasn't materialized into the bonanza that they thought. And so to me, it's like, if you want to sell Cristiano Ronaldo on its commercial appeal, do that. But I don't think that's what Thomas Tuchel wants. And quite frankly, if you're in a situation where you need Cristiano Ronaldo to be the focal point of your attack, you're not a team that can win the Champions League, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we've seen teams do that before. They've bought players just to accommodate one when they should be building the team. I think the most obvious example is Barcelona from the 2010s, where they were constantly trying to find players to accommodate Messi. When, if anything, it's not about accommodating Messi; it's about just accommodating the football team, and that's what failed them for many years, and depending on who was in charge. But I completely agree with your point, Phil. I completely agree. There are several questions in here for you, by the way, Phil. There's about 4 or 5. So I'm just going to go through them one by one. First one is Matthew Crawley, when he wants to show. Good evening, Matthew. His question for you is, Phil, is it true that Frenkie de Jong's back pay is holding up the transfer? And he also says he's a big fan.
Thank you, Matthew. Much appreciated, mate. I tweeted on this a day or 2 days ago, that his contract, the complexity of his contract, and extracting him from that was not an overnight process.
Yeah.
There's a lot of nonsense. Laporte is saying, was players not for sale, but apparently Chelsea were talking to him today about De Jong. Is he for sale or is he not? Right? And of course, Barcelona are desperate to get other clubs involved, which I think is part of the hold-up. But Barcelona want other clubs involved to raise the price. So they're desperately hoping Chelsea do get involved. Yes, that was part of what I was told 2 days ago, was that there's complex issue. But here's the thing: Barcelona have to pay that if Frenkie de Jong doesn't go. Can they afford to pay it? My guess is they'll probably meet somewhere in the middle and agree that United will pay half and Barcelona will pay half. United are still cautiously optimistic that this deal will happen.
Anyway, for Goldman Sachs to bail out Barcelona any way they can. Next question for you. I think what Rio's trying to say is, I think he means gone. I think he's put by. Well, it's a typo by mistake. But I think the question is, do you think Ronaldo will be gone by the 1st of September? I think that's what Rio's question
I don't know is the question. I can honestly see something in the next couple of weeks where there's a claim down from Ronaldo, and you know what? There's some compromise, because I don't think there's that offer out there for him. If there's another club out there, top club, Ronaldo will go, right? Which also makes me question whether there was any serious interest from City in the first place. Because if you have the same ambition 12 months ago that you have today, and Manchester City and Manchester United are coming in for you, and you're desperate to win the Champions League and you choose United, then you're an idiot, right? So it makes me question whether that interest was legit at all. And I think that when I look at Ronaldo today, is Ronaldo better than he was 12 months ago? No. So, to me, I think it's still a very distinct possibility that he will, not because of any other reason. I just don't think any other top club will come in for him.
Yeah, I'll say, I know a lot of people are thinking Bayern Munich are going to sign him. I don't see any. There's not a hope in hell. There's not a hope in hell Bayern Munich compromise anything they want to do as a football club to buy Ronaldo. He's a great player, but he won't do it. I don't see them doing it. That's the only club I can write out.
Here's the thing: the teams that can win the Champions League are exceptionally well organized. They don't make decisions mid-June, July on strikers they're going to sign. They make decisions about that 6 months ago. So if you go to a top club like Bayern Munich or any of these top clubs that are exceptionally well run and say, here's a player we're offering you, they already know who they want. They wanted money. Right?
That was, for me, the perfect choice.
So, because money is a player to have his game that gives him something different. There are no top clubs sitting there going, you know what, we're going to jump on that. That's something United did, right?
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. Some of them are right, some of them are wrong. But top clubs, when you call as an agent and offer players to top clubs, most of the time they say no. Because their process of elimination for players that they want isn't top down like that. They come up with a player based on scouting, metrics, everything else, and to say, this is the right guy, now we'll contact his agent. Don't call us, we'll call you. Right?
Yeah.
Clubs that get offered players by agents that don't do the proper due diligence are the ones who fail. Right?
Yeah.
So to me, there's no top club sitting there going, whatever our problem is up front, Ronaldo is the answer. So it's very possible that he will still be there. I still think he will.
I still think, even if he is around, I don't see him having such an important role. And the reason I don't see him having such an important role, like you said, it's compromise. It's compromise.
See if he does stay. You're in a perfect position now to turn around and say, you're not starting every week. Right? Because you know what? You need us as much as we need you, if not more. Because if you could get him, you would have got it. So take that ego down a peg or two and realize you're part of this club, you're part of this team, with no more of those Brentford straps, right? So United, this actually could work in United's favour.
Especially if you have more control on him. And that's something that we really do need. Another question from you, from a man named Phil. Phil, for you, another question is, what's the update on Christian Eriksen?
Well,
if you have anything.
I asked about this a couple of days ago, and obviously everything was verbally agreed. They had to agree everything in writing. So it's a formality. And I was on a podcast last Friday. I said that I'm certain that Eriksen already knows where he's going, and I'm certain that the club who are going to sign him already know. So to me, Eriksen wanted some assurances, of course, the fact that he wants to play in the World Cup. This year, I'm sure he's going to play. So to me, it's all a formality, and that obviously United are in the process of getting that over the line. That's going to happen.
I know that's a player I think we can all agree in terms of what he's done in the Premier League, what he's done at Inter Milan. He'd be a fantastic player for us because he's not like he's not like the social media influence player. He's just a footballer that's committed to his job. He nearly died on the field because he loves his profession. Like that to me is something I really want at this club. And this comment here by Rio, I think, is absolutely spot on. Ronaldo was Ed Woodward's last dance. Shows you everything that is wrong with that man. Which then floods onto this question by James Jones. I'll get your response on this one first, Keane. It says, "Why do you guys want him to stay if you believe there's a rebuild, or do you think there's a chance we can win something next season if he still stays?" So this is back on what we were saying earlier on when this question came through from James. Your thoughts on that, mate?
I think, look, as a short-term option during the rebuild, there's definitely reason to want him to stay because again, I suppose depth we have up front. So that's the reason why I would prefer Cristiano Ronaldo to stay just for 1 year. So we do have time to replace him appropriately, whether it's we go into the market for a younger striker or we give one of our younger lads a chance the year after and a chance to get into the team, as Ronaldo's not going to play every single week. We do have a chance to bleed in some of the younger players, whether it's Hugill or Joe McNeil or someone like that, or we do obviously go out and buy in Kunku or someone like that in next summer in that respect. But I think just for one season I'd like to keep him because especially I mentioned earlier Martial's injury record. He had even on his 6-month loan deal with Seville, he did have a couple of injuries and loss of form, so I'd be slightly concerned with that. So that's why I'd like Ronaldo to stay for one season, just to kind of help be a stopgap for the one season. And then obviously, look, if we can get someone in next season who can come in and play up front for the following season, then by all means, then 100%. That's the way I'd like to see it anyway.
And just on the flip side of that, I'll bring this to you, Phil. Just a spin on this question is, if, for example, Ronaldo does stay on this regard, it looks like Keane's dropped because his internet. Would you favour him for just the league or rotation in that sense, or would you play him in the Europa League? I know that he might take it as an insult because it's Ronaldo and only wants to play in the Champions League because that's always motivated for his Champions League goals and all that. But would you have a preference?
He's still your main striker, but I just don't think you feel obligated to play him every week. I don't think you feel obligated to leave him on the pitch. I don't think you feel obligated to indulge him when he throws straps. I think it's time United stood up for themselves and fined him and disciplined him for that type of behaviour. I think when you're trying to foster a collective atmosphere in the dressing room, which Ten Hag will, it's imperative you don't have one who thinks he's above everyone else. And look, he, in his defence, he asks the same of you that he asks of himself. He's a consummate professional, but he also has to realise that whilst in his head he may still feel 23, he's not. And so I think for Manchester United, they have to have an answer to Cristiano Ronaldo 12 months from now. So even if he stays, so United have to evolve that football club and make sure that they have a player that's ready to take over from him. Ideally, you sign that player in January, or before. But I think the football club has to come first. If you start Cristiano Ronaldo every week and you aren't bringing other strikers into the fold, I don't see how that benefits a football club in the long term when he's not going to be here. And I think it's prepared to any chance of him ever being captain of this football club. And I just don't understand why this was necessary. I mean, I can understand if he's 23, 24 or in the prime of his career doing this, that's fine. But, to do it now and to do that on Ferguson, to do that on the fans, to do that, I mean, it's just, to me, totally unnecessary. And I think it has changed my opinion of him in some sense. And if he leaves and goes to another Premier League club, then I honestly think that is disgraceful treachery. I think that is, it should be completely reclassified, in my opinion, and how United fans view him, because I just think this is not a Dennis Law situation where the club are getting rid of a player and he goes to Man City in the last year of his contract. This is completely different.
Yeah, 100%. This is not that recollection where it's a player at the peak of his powers, where he's going to, on his own, can dictate any situation. He can dictate a game on his own. He can decide whether or not we win something. At the minute, the team has to contribute to Ronaldo winning something. Ronaldo on his own can't do it anymore. This isn't, like you said, he isn't that 23-year-old anymore. He's approaching 38. He's at the twilight of his career, maybe 1 or 2 years at best, depending on how he feels mentally, like, to continue in Europe. I agree with you. Like, something has to change, and I think the one thing I'm going to touch upon earlier that you mentioned earlier on, I think is key, is ego. That ego that he has is probably the most difficult ego in football, but it has to be nailed in. If they can't nail it in, then he has to go. And then just like I said earlier on, if he does go, I can't be bothered.
The ego is not the worst thing in the world to me. I think all top athletes have ego. Michael Jordan had ego.
Yeah,
lots of top athletes have ego. That's not the issue. I think there's a difference, though, between arrogance and confidence. And I think you can be supremely confident in yourself, but also appreciate others. But when you're arrogant and you don't appreciate others, I'm not sure that is, especially at this point in his career, I'm not sure that's the best thing for United. He's a great individual, but you need to build a team. And look, they've been linked with Brian Brobby this morning, and obviously, United fans are not too happy with that. But what I would stress is this: if you look at Liverpool, for example, which is clearly the model United are going to target, there's a lot of players in that team that are not glamorous. There's Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, there's James Milner, there's Joel Matip. There's players that if they were linked with United before they came, United fans would be devastated. This is what league championship winning teams are comprised of. You have non-glamorous football players in your team. You have players. I mean, when Gallo came in, I thought he did a good job. Right?
He did.
This is what a team is comprised of. Players that are willing to work, players that are willing to do things that aren't appreciated. You look at Jamie Vardy. Jamie Vardy wasn't exactly a superstar. Maybe him and Danny Drinkwater essentially fired Leicester to a league title by themselves, pretty much, with Mahrez and a few others. So to me, I think there will be unglamorous signings. That's just part of life, right? There won't all be the exciting signings, but those are really key, important players in the dressing room. And some of United's best players over the years, Ji-Sung Park, what have you, players like that, were not big glamorous signings, but were absolutely vital. Ronnie Johnson, right? Players like that, that give you so much more. And so to me, I think, I knew this was going to happen. I knew Ten Hag was going to make some unpopular decisions, and then fans are going to, his honeymoon period would start to come to an end. And to me, it doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It matters what Ten Hag thinks. If Ten Hag likes the player, wants the player, then get the player.
Exactly. He's the one in control.
Well, you have to remove
to be in control.
Ten Hag to fail, right? So if you don't get him the players that he wants, then he has every right to turn around and say, I didn't fail, you failed. Right? Mm-hmm. If you get him the players he wants, he can't do that. And for United to identify problems, they have to have solutions. Right? They have to solve, okay, we have to make sure that there's no plausible deniability from a manager, that it isn't just his failure. Because every other manager after Ferguson has had plausible deniability because United have not signed players that they've asked for. That has to stop.
Absolutely. And comments coming through thick and fast. Like, no joke, there is 75 people watching. This is absolutely brilliant. So I'm just going to try and find some questions because I know everyone's been at it. This is a question that came through earlier on. It's the dressing room was rotten last season with Pogba, Lingard, etc. gone now. How much does that improve the situation? I can already guess Phil's answer, but Phil, on you go.
I think what needs to be said here, a lot of players were really upset when Rangnick was going out in press conferences and laying the players because what they felt was it was unfair, that it wasn't a true depiction of what was going on, because lots of players felt that the club didn't keep promises, the club lied to them, the club didn't fulfill certain obligations. The club have certainly done things wrong many times in the past. So they felt, Rangnick's coming out here eviscerating us, but not telling the other side of the story why we're behaving this way, why we not feel motivated for our current employers. So, and this is where, look, if Ronaldo turns around at the end of the season and says, I'm leaving for these reasons, fine. Because I've always said, one of the things that we should try to overcome is our temptation to tell players just to get out if they don't want to be there, because we need to also ask, why do so many people want to leave the football club? That has to be fixed. When Ronaldo's talking about, if you look at the people that are connected to him, talking about things like whenever you've got the football, he has question marks about the executive branch of the football club. Those are legitimate questions. That's perfectly reasonable. Yeah. And this is what I'm talking about. So that dressing room won't be fixed until there's trust between all elements of the football club, top, bottom, everywhere else, and where there's consistency in the discipline structure and there's incentivized properly.
Definitely. This is a great question, actually. I'll just go back to Tom, because I'm going to butcher that first part. Do the Glazers run out of road if this season is another failure? Keane, I'll go to you on that one.
Well, they've ran out of road already. Like they've already run out of road. The football club is failing now. Commercially, they'll see their money they're raking in, and they're loving that. But how much longer can they see this fail? And for this football club not to, bring in success, because eventually the sponsors are going to dip.
Yeah.
The more they're not successful on the football pitch, see the big deals they're getting with Adidas and stuff like that. Adidas walk away because Manchester United, aren't what they used to be, and it'll become abundantly clear. There's a reason why United are getting sponsored by TeamViewer now, and not bigger things like the Vodafone, Chevrolet, Aon, AIG. Things like that. There's a reason why the sponsorship deals and stuff like that are getting a lot smaller. I think the relentless fan protests as well are going to put pressure on it this season. I know 1958 are doing a lot of work to put pressure on the owners. They're attacking the owners and obviously trying to attack the sponsors. They're also there's a lot of stuff going on with protests and stuff like that. So from that point of view, the fans are doing their part in that way. But in terms of the question, eventually they're going to run out of road, whether that's next this season or a couple of years down the line. The Glazers are going to have to sell eventually.
Yeah,
and it's one of them situations where I look at these parasites, and that's what I'm going to call them. It's the best thing I can say while live on air. Bloodsuckers. Eventually, blood's going to run out of this football club, and they're going to have to sell at some stage. I just don't know whether that's going to be this coming season or whenever, really.
Yeah, I agree. Before we move on, I'm just going to respond to one comment because it's actually making me laugh, and it's from Killian. It's not my fault. My laptop is like our defense. A nightmare. It's probably that's why it keeps doing that. It's the light literally from the laptop, and it flashes on the camera, and it just hits me, and it keeps doing this stupid flash thing. I can't control it. So that's generally what my laptop is. It's like a poor centre-back partnership. Can't control it. You're fucked. But we are going to move on. There is a lot of questions. I know, guys, I haven't been able to answer them all, so I do apologise. We'll try and come back to them at the end, we will try. But we want to move on towards Frenkie de Jong. Obviously, it's Ten Hag's his golden ticket. It's the one transfer that he really does want in. And we may as well go through it and see where we're at, because obviously, is it Chelsea he's going to? Is it going to Man United? We know Chelsea Chelsea's owner Ted Boehly is meeting with Barcelona's Juan Laporta, which is going to be funny. He'll probably run through him like a ton of bricks. But in terms of this now, the deal, just for yourself, Phil, is it Chelsea or is it Man United, and what do you see on that one?
I don't really think Chelsea are a serious contender for Frenkie de Jong. They've got Conte and they've got Jorginho in there. I don't really think that's a serious link. They were clearly meeting about Azpilicueta and Marcos Alonso. When they say Frenkie de Jong is going to be talked about, this reminds me of the Vitinha transfer rumour where allegedly discussions took place with United. Well, all that happened was an agent called and offered him, and
Yeah.
they called that discussion. So if John Laporta brings it up to Chelsea, which he should do, I would do the same thing if I'm trying to sell him. It's in his interest to try to get more people interested in De Jong. I think that doesn't constitute talks. Look, that's Barcelona need to get somebody else involved in this to get the price up. Right, that's absolutely vital. I said 6 weeks ago that clearly De Jong wanted to go to United, or they wouldn't pursue this. They wouldn't be in negotiations with the team for a month that didn't want to sell the player. But I have to be honest, like I'm sort of 50-50 on whether he's going to sign. I used to be very confident, but now I'm not so confident. I'm 50-50 on it. What I would say is that he is someone that Ten Hag really wants of all the signings this summer. That's the one he wants the most.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what I was saying about removing excuses for failure. You can't bring a new manager in and not sign the one player that's fundamental to the way he plays. Because even if you go out and sign a cheaper alternative at 40 million or 50 million, there's a high probability you waste that 50 million because it's not the right player, rather than using 70 million well. So it's also symbolic too, because United need to portray an image that they're back in control of this football club, that they're capable of giving it CPR, and they're capable of restoring United back to former glories. And United have few revenue streams that they depend heavily on. Gate receipts, of course. They depend heavily on television money, and they depend heavily on sponsorship revenue. They're all linked to how United play on the field. They're out of resources to do anything other than act like a football club. I think that this signing is almost more than a signing; it's symbolic. So I obviously United badly want the player. De Jong's given them assurances. It's just a question of coming to terms with Barcelona on some issues, but I don't see any alternative out there, and I think that's partly why the United are so anxious to get him over the line.
That's what worries me. Is I think Keane will probably agree. Is like if we don't sign De Jong, like Ten Hag, it's like you mentioned earlier on about like Ten Hag's like it's not him that's failed. It's they've failed to deliver his key target, and it's the one he wants. If we don't get Ten Hag, he has to rely on midfielders that, albeit you could coach, but you can't coach them to play his way. He needs players that are already strategic and key. Like if you McTominay, Fred, they can't play like De Jong, and De Jong can't play like them. Like, and that's where he's inhibited.
To be fair, Solskjaer wanted Thiago for this reason. And didn't get him. Right, because he wanted to play defensive midfielder that could link, and didn't get him. So left-footed centre back, which is Lisandro Martinez. Solskjaer wanted 2 years ago, didn't get him. Right, Anthony a winger, which is when he wanted Sancho, which was the same summer window, didn't get him that year. So these are things that United should have addressed years ago, so that they could afford to buy a striker this summer. But they can't not address this problem, because they're going to need to buy a striker in 12 months at worst, and they're going to have to spend a lot of money on that. They can't be sitting next summer needing a defensive linking midfielder and a striker. They won't have the money for that. So it absolutely has to happen.
And that's something that really does reflect us. Whoever United buy this summer as well, they are going to need time to adapt to the Premier League, because they have, apart from Eriksen, the players that they're trying to do, like bring in, haven't played in the Premier League before. It's going to take time for them to adjust. So you would expect that there's going to be, if they don't adapt like really quickly, there's going to be immediate backlash from fans, which is never a good thing. You should, for me, I would give them the 12 months, let them embed in the team, then focus. But if they don't adapt, United's trigger happy response will be, "Oh, this midfielder's not worked. This winger's not worked. This striker, whoever we've got, he ain't up to stuff. So we're going to have to go and spend. We're going to have to go and build again," which is something that's another telling point of United is a patience factor. But Keane, obviously, you brought this comment up, and just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it has to show this how serious the board are as well. But again, it goes back to how Ten Hag wants to play and how integral Frenkie de Jong is to a Ten Hag system. You can't undermine the manager and not bring this player in, because that's what you're doing. Because if you bring in the secondary option, who look, I know people are floating Ruben Neves around. Fantastic player, by the way, but not probably a Ten Hag type player. You have to bring in players to help, fit his blueprint and his style of play. Because if you bring in players who are not, acclimatized to that blueprint, we're not going to see a proper Erik Ten Hag style of football. And ultimately, what's going to happen is you're not going to see the results you want to see on the football pitch. So if the club are serious about changing this perception that they are serious and they want to help this manager create this new era of Manchester United, then look, simple as that, they need to sign Frenkie de Jong. If they don't, that just everything Murtaugh's they're saying he's doing, or Richard Arnold said he's doing, it completely contradicts everything that was said. And for me, they just need to cop on. They need to get this deal done sooner rather than later. I know there's complexities in terms of Frankie's wages. Probably something that's out of our control. And Phil probably said that they probably meet in the middle where United will pay half, Barcelona pay half type thing, which hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But if you spend 8 weeks or whatever it is on this signing now, and you don't get it over the line, you're playing catch up. And again, I know I made this comment a couple of weeks ago. I was speaking to Dale O'Donnell on this podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I said, this reminds me of 2013 when we were chasing Fabregas. We didn't get him. And we wasted most of summer. Then Fellaini came in. Now, I look at this now. If Frenkie de Jong doesn't come in, it's very worrying for Erik Ten Hag. Because at the end of the day, he's a fantastic coach, no doubt about it. But you have to get the players in to help, suit his style of play. Because if you don't, we're not going to see it. And then you'd have the usual people saying, is he a good manager? Well, he is a good manager, but you're not giving them players to implement his style at the end of the day.
Yeah, if you're going to hire a chef, you have to give him ingredients. Otherwise, what's the point? If you're going to say, I need chicken, but I don't give you chicken, here's turkey. You're not going to get the same thing. You know what I mean? You're not, if you're bringing a chef in to produce a certain type of delicacy because you like his finished product, you have to give him the ingredients to build it. You can't bring him in, turn around and say, I like that delicacy, but I can't secure the ingredients to get it. Can you build me something to look just like it? Well, it's not going to be just like it. So, there's no point in doing that. So to me, I think they have to get that done. That signing over the line. They have no choice. Yeah. And there's also a deadline on it. United have got a deadline on it where they will move on the other targets. It's frustrating. United are involved in these every year,
especially when you see our rivals who are. They've already got everything. It's like a premeditated assault in a way. You've compared it to soldiers earlier on for Ten Hag needs soldiers, United needs soldiers. Man City and Liverpool are run like that. It's all premeditated. It's well done in advance. Liverpool knew that Bayern wanted Sadio Mane, so they signed Fabio Carvalho. They signed Darwin Núñez. They were already prepared. Man City, even though they were getting Haaland, signed Julian Alvarez in January anyway. It's clear cut. It's all fixated around their weaknesses. Although City have very rarely any weaknesses except Pep Guardiola's brain. That is their weakness because he just constantly overthinks when it matters the most. But as a reflection for us that we are just always, you would say 2 steps back, but compared to Liverpool and Man United, we're at least 100 because we just don't think in a forward-thinking manner, and that's what's always been a problem for us.
Well, I think United also made a lot of personnel changes this summer, a lot.
True.
Many of whom don't have experience in this industry. If you go back to 2013, whenever United made those changes back then, you saw the consequences of not having experience doing what they're doing. So that did concern me a bit because, usually when you hire someone new, you come in with all that new enthusiasm about doing the best possible job for the company and being completely inflexible. Manchester United are going to get judged at the end of this window by their business. It's going to be very telling. It's going to be very telling as to where the football club are at. If they turn around at the end of the window and tell you a square is a circle, this is a great signing, but we all know it's not, then it goes back to what King was saying earlier about the Glazers in their own Street death spiral. I honestly feel if they can't arrest this decline and a slide, and it's reflected in their stock, in their share price. It's reflected in lots of other metrics that are very concerning. the club will become untenable, and because there's so many similarities between today and what happened in 2010, 2009, 2010. And so I think the only difference between the Glazers and the Hicks and Gillette was the Glazers refinanced about 3 months before Hicks and Gillette did, but they were lucky because they were not capable of servicing that debt at the interest rates that it was. So I think for the Glazers, when you look at the Todd Bowley takeover at Chelsea and the fact that there's new legislation that's going to make it harder for executives to take out money out of football clubs, and if that gets ubiquitously enforced, then you question what the incentives are for the Glazers to continue to own Manchester United when
they named it a non-Glazers clause at the end. Like, imagine having a clause in legislation named after you for how bad you've been as an owner.
Well, you know what, Keane,
and rightfully so for what they've done.
Yes, but the thing is, it's all great. You know, it's great to see journalists coming out saying all these things, but these are the same people from 2005 slandered United fans for doing exactly what they're now doing, right? And they'd like you to forget they called United fans anti-Semitic, right? Anti-American, nice. Anyone that knows anything about Manchester United fans knows how utterly absurd that is, right?
Exactly.
Called them anti-Semitic for the effigy, which was done and built by a Jewish guy, by the way, of Glazer being hung. And so this is nonsense. And they slandered United fans and didn't support them. And now they want to support them because it's expedient to do so, because they now know it's not going to cost them access, right? And so to me, I think, a lot of people are a bit late to the party, and then leveling ridiculous allegations at people like Andy Mitten that they're Glazer stooges. Have you ever heard such nonsense in all your life? And it's such a toxic topic anyway, because it's now been so hijacked by people that have a very narrow agenda. And there's some people that have legitimate intentions and admirable intentions, but there's other people that think advocacy is calling people Glazer stooges on Twitter, because they're too stupid to even know what a Glazer stooge is. Because you back the club on an issue does not mean you're a Glazer stooge. Jesus, it's so reductive. But it's frustrating. But it's I think the Glazers are, when you look at where the share price is, you look at United's commercial revenue, look at all their other revenue that's standing still. They've got 3 places they can generate revenue in: through selling shares, but in order to generate real money, they have to sell voting shares, which would prohibit their ability to take money out. They have to either sell the club, or they have to get it through either streaming rights or Super League, some cash bonanza that's on the horizon that they predict. And they will be back with a Super League, make no mistake about it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So otherwise, if that's imminent, the question really then becomes, what's the incentive for them to own the football club when revenues drop and they can't arrest the slide, the value of the football club drops.
And especially because obviously the value of the club as well has went down, 1.3 billion in the past 12 months. Like, you'll know the exact figure, Phil. I don't know the exact figure, but it's well over a billion anyway. That value itself, that reduction, as fans, for us, it's great to hear. I mean, it's not great, obviously, hearing that your club value's gone down, but for us, it's great because it means the Glazers can't command the big 4, 5, 6 billion that they want.
Well,
they can't command that. They can't command that anymore.
They will, though, because Chelsea are not a £4 billion football club, right? The price will be set based on who's bidding for it.
Yeah.
Right? And, the thing is about football clubs, though, if you're a billionaire and you are someone that is in this for money, you don't buy a football club. There's a million other businesses that you can buy. It's going to give you a much better return on your investment than a football club.
Definitely.
So I don't understand. It is a narrow window of people that want to buy it. And it's usually for ego, because there's no other justification for it. And so it's, or the Saudis, you get used. I don't want to see it. Manchester United, and that Manchester United generate enough revenue. They don't need a sugar daddy. They just need someone to care for the football club.
Yeah, I don't personally care who comes in, as long as it's something like, well, I do to an extent, but not overly. But if somebody does take over the club, I want somebody who has genuine interest at heart. Like, we do generate 600 million plus a year in revenue. Like, we could, to an extent, live off that. It's just somebody who can come in and just put a little bit extra cash into stuff that matters, like redeveloping the stadium, making it more modern in a sense where we don't have to leave Old Trafford, just fix what's around it that's going wrong, like the roof, for example, where it's constantly leaking, like all sorts of things like that. Extra money into like infrastructure and the training ground, because it's compared to other grounds like Tottenham or Man City or Liverpool, where obviously spent a lot of money on Millwood. Ours is going to, it was labelled as a training ground to be the best one going, but it's becoming obsolete. It's becoming obsolete, and that's something that we can't have. It has to be up there with the best. And Alex has mentioned we need a British owner.
Yeah, Leicester owners are fantastic. They're not British.
I'm not bothered. As long as it's just somebody who comes in, it just doesn't have the same motives as the Glazers, which is they're already rich, but they're taking money out of the club just to feed their own, which they then try and invest in.
That's Newcastle by British owners.
Exactly, and we'll be wrapping up shortly. But there is one question actually that's really interesting, because it was actually from Killian, but only the value is different to what I saw. But this was touching back up on Ronaldo for again, but it was seriously believe Ronaldo leaving is a blessing in disguise for Ten Hag, but obviously needs to be replaced. Any tripping with Duncan Castle reports 225 million for Anthony Martinez, a deal, and would we be happy with that? The 125 million, I think that means euros, because I've seen 106 million pound going both, but I'd be happy with both players, but I wouldn't go as far as spending 106 million. But for getting two players that fit two positions, I'm okay with that. But for yourselves, Phil, Keane, for me, I'm happy with that, but it's not enough for me. Not in a greed sense, but I want more players.
Look, Ajax are smart. They sensed United's desperation, so they upped the price on Anthony. United were looking at Anthony weeks ago, to be fair. And the thing about Ronaldo being unhappy is not new. Everyone's known this. This has been an issue with Maguire. That fight was legit, everything, right? So, so United have known about his apparent unhappiness for a while. But Anthony is not an £80 million footballer, right?
Definitely not. I agree.
And so United can't be faulted for not meeting that price. And Lisandro Martinez is someone they were quite confident on, of course, 2 days ago. So I think they will do that deal. And I think Ajax will have a similar problem to United in the sense that you have players that desperately want to leave. So what do you do? And so Ajax are also careful when you look at David Neres. They had lots of offers for David Neres a year or two ago, which were far more than what they got for Benfica. Held on to him, didn't develop the way expected. And they'll be conscious of that. So I think that United like both those players, no question about it. And I think if they would get them out of there for significantly less than that.
Yeah, I agree. I do disagree with one comment though, and that's Alex's comment saying we need British players, Harry Kane and Declan Rice. No, we don't need British players. We just need players that actually fit the system. Doesn't matter where you come from. We don't need Kane. We don't need Rice, and we don't especially need Declan Rice. I'm sorry, I know Keane rates him. I don't. On the respect of it, he doesn't fit the bill for what we want. The player we should have got, if you're looking at midfielders, is going to be controversial because he plays for a club I absolutely despise. But the player that we should have got was Calvin Phillips. He's actually a player that actually fits the bill. I know he's British, but he actually fits the bill more than Declan Rice. Doesn't matter where you come from. For me, as long as you fit what the manager wants. Declan Rice, for me, isn't that type of player. Harry Kane, maybe, but he drops too deep. He doesn't have the pace to cover as a pressing player in a sense that Ten Hag likes a striker, which is a hindrance to him. But he's a brilliant goal scorer, brilliant playmaker, but he isn't quick enough to deal with what Ten Hag wants. You'd have to keep him 10, 15 yards within the box. That, for me, he doesn't suit us. Great player, doesn't fit. I would have Phillips over Rice purely because that makes more sense to me. But he's went to City and he's going to be one of the best midfielders in the Premier League the next 2 years.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Calvin Phillips is a very, very good player. I think United would have had a harder time getting him out of Leeds than City. And again, they're targeting the player that their manager wants. Manager doesn't want Calvin Phillips. Manager wants Frenkie de Jong.
Yeah.
And so I think if they got him somewhere in the middle between a Calvin Phillips and Tchouaméni price, I think that's a fair enough fee. And so, of course, if you're also Barcelona, you know that this is the one guy Ten Hag wants more than anything, and they know that United desperately want them, so they're doing the right thing by trying to get as much out of United as possible. They need that money.
Yeah.
So, but I really, I mean, I don't care about Calvin Phillips didn't go to Manchester United, and this nonsense about we need British players. I can give you 1,000 examples of British players being utterly treacherous. When I'm talking about Irish players too, I'm talking about
Scottish players haven't come in it. We're all shit too. We're all shit as well.
Rio Ferdinand was a British player who met Chelsea behind Manchester United's back after forgetting, liberally use that word, to take his drug test. So I've forgotten to take a few myself for the same reason. And so
I told you he's entertaining at the start of the show.
Anyway, so there's Jesse Lingard. Another Jesse Lingard. Oh,
exactly.
It's nonsense.
There's only, with all respect, in terms of like British players or whatever, there's only one that I would love to have in this team because he's entertaining to watch. He's a grafter. For me, it'd be Jude Bellingham. But the problem with that is the cost for him is for an 18-year-old is so high, such a premium on Dortmund, and he doesn't.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Go on, you go. By all means.
Look at the players United have missed out on.
He's one of them.
They've been far more prominent than the players they've sent. So Bellingham and Haaland should have been sent. If you're not going to send the world's top players, you have to send the best young players in the world. You can't miss out on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why they can't miss out on De Jong, because there's too many times where they've missed out on players that they should have signed alternatives that have not been anywhere near good enough, right?
Absolutely.
And this, I mean, imagine where Solskjaer would have been if he'd have gotten Haaland and Bellingham.
It does make you think, though, in a way, because there were two key players like Haaland, a monster of a human being, physical specimen beyond. Like, I wouldn't mind trading some of that, like that body. I wouldn't mind his pace. I wouldn't mind his strength. Not the blonde hair. I'm not a fan of blondes, but I wouldn't mind having that physical prowess that he's got. Like, he's such a freak athlete. And Bellingham, he's such a likable player. He speaks up really well. Like, I watched the Der Klassiker last season when he spoke about the referee, funnily enough, who got guilty for match fixing. Mm-hmm. And obviously he says like he's cheated Dortmund out the defeat to Bayern. And that's a reflection. I like that in a player, somebody who, even so young, is willing to speak up, and he doesn't mince his words. He's straight on it. And also he's a brilliant technical player, but the value of him now is so high that you just cannot get anything from it. Obviously, Keane's had to drop out, but Keane, as always, he's been absolutely brilliant tonight, so I just wanted to give him that mention as well. There are a couple of comments here, which we'll come to before we wrap up the show tonight. Obviously, Phil, main man, he's been absolutely brilliant again. This comment here from Harry is Neves, a Premier League proven player. Obviously, Keane's mentioned Neves before. If Erik ten Hag is sacked next year, we could be left with a few Dutch lads that aren't up to speed in the Premier League yet, and new manager would want them gone as well.
Yeah, but you can't knock back Erik ten Hag right now on the premise that he might be sacked, because maybe he'd be successful. You have to trust his judgment, and you can't turn around and say, we're going to make you the main man in our football club, being the main focal point of our everything that we're doing in our football team. You're going to shape our team, you're going to shape our philosophy, but you're not going to get the players that you want. This is the problem that United have had for years. So you have to trust him, right? And then what you do, of course, if Ten Hag fails, this is why it's really important to have an overarching identity. We get someone that was like Ten Hag that wants to play that way, so that we don't have to have revolution, just evolution every couple of years. So I don't think you can turn around and assume, what if Ten Hag gets sacked in a year, therefore I don't back him. You have to do the opposite. You have to say, what if we really back him, he could be successful.
Exactly. I don't know where. I can understand some people may have that thought process that he does get sacked, but I don't see United doing that. He's going to be here for 2 or 3 years unless something monumentally bad happens. I don't see it happening on that respect. He needs to be given the appropriate time. Like they've had managers like Van Gaal who they kept for 2.5 years. Very horrible way to dismiss him, although at the very end it was the right decision. But what they did was disgusting. It wasn't even the club that sacked him. It was a flaming journalist. At the end of the FA Cup final, in that press conference, it was horrible. Mourinho, they pulled out on him after he wanted a centre back from 5 that he had named, didn't get it. They gave him a new contract. I always reiterate back to the words from Gary Neville, where it was actually it was him, it was Roy Keane, Jamie Carragher, and Graham Souness, and they spoke about giving him more time. And the one thing that was a reflection was Neville's comments, where he said that, they gave him a new contract, and then he asked for players, and he was immediately at it at the press conference when they were in America, on the preseason tour. He was immediately at it because he didn't get what he wanted. He pulled out on it, and it cost them so much money just to sack him. And it's a reflection of United. That's again about the 1 billion, where United haven't just wasted 1 billion on players, as you've rightly commented on. They wasted money on sacking managers they deemed to be the right time, but it was actually the wrong time. They should have waited, in my opinion, until the end of the season to sack Mourinho.
This goes back to what we just said. So you don't give Mourinho a new contract and then not back him because he may get sacked.
Yeah.
If you give him a new contract, you have to back him.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, just sack him now, right? You
exactly.
Can't expect failure. You have to expect success. It's what you do. And so that summer, he wanted Alderweireld, I think it was, from Spurs.
Alderweireld, Godin, Jerome Boateng. And there's two more, but I know it was those three.
I was in America when I was in that LA press conference. I could tell he was very upset.
Yeah,
but he was also lied to because he was under the impression that we're in for Alderweireld, and they never were. I mean, they were offered him a day before the window closed for 25 million, and Woodward said no. So it's with Mourinho, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you can't hire a manager and not back him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I don't see him getting sacked. I see him fulfilling this contract. I do, unless something goes horribly wrong, where he is going to have targets he needs to fulfill. But a man that demands so much of himself, I don't see him not getting sacked like that within a year. I don't see that. If he doesn't get what he wants, though, I think he has pride in his work where potentially he could decide, well, I want out, and he might walk. We've seen managers do that before. He's not directly an Antonio Conte, although, to be fair, that show we did last year on Transfer Deadline Day where we roasted William about bonbons, how he didn't want Arteta to be replaced by Conte, was brilliant. He isn't a Conte-type manager, but as a person, I see that likeness in him where if he doesn't get what he wants, he definitely would take pride in his work and be like, well, if I'm not going to get what I want, I'll go. I think he would. Yeah. I don't see him doing that so quickly at United. I think he will stick around. I think the club will stick him around.
I mean, look, no manager gets 100% of what they want, right? Want to get the vast majority of it, right? So there is a bit of give and take in that, right? But if Ten Hag's getting sacked in a year, that means United have had another catastrophic season. And if that's the case, the whole house of cards will be crumbling down. Who United have signed will be the least of their worries. So I think if this season is bad, because right now their business hasn't bought them enough of the fans, or not bought them any more time. So if they start badly, the fans will go nuts, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, by the time the season starts, there'll be new signings, and there'll be more than what we see. Well, the question is, are those signings of sufficient nature that will buy United more time, that gives fans confidence that they are genuinely trying to arrest this decline? That will be the question. And so, I think if Ten Hag's getting sacked in a year, who he signed will be the least of United's worries.
Yeah, if we try to find somebody to come in after that, because it'll just be another case of, well, they've screwed up again. It'll be another reflection of that, fans moaning, which we really can't have. I'll go for one last question, and we'll wrap up tonight. So this is actually fun enough a question for you, Phil, and it's from Jonathan. He's saying he would like to hear what you have to say about the Glazers potentially selling. And after this, we'll wrap up. It's been a brilliant show, but
it's really simple. I mean, the Glazers have one incentive deal, not just United, and that's to take money out of the football club. That's to self-enrichment. That's it.
Yeah.
So as soon as that function stops being served, they'll sell. Or when they scale the loss in the value of the football club versus what they would profit selling it, maybe it makes sense. The Glazers will always sell Manchester United if someone makes the right offer, again, for the same reason. There's not a lot of people out there with the money that you would need to buy the football club, but there's probably people interested in Manchester United who are sitting on their hands right now saying if we wait 6 months to a year, the value of this football club will drop significantly and we'll get it cheaper. That's what I would do if I was a potential buyer, was sitting on big cash liquidity, because if you've got cash in 6 months, you're king, because what's coming financially is a tsunami. So I think if you're smart, this isn't the time to buy Manchester United. You let United bleed for a while, but then you buy it. So for the Glazers, they need United to finish top 4 next season, because the financial consequences, if not, are far greater than what we've seen this year. That this deal's up in another year and a half. No, 2014, 13 or 14, they signed that. So that'll have to get renegotiated. And at this, United are in a much weaker position today than what they were 10 years ago. So I think this really is the last roll of the dice for United, and they have to get it right this summer. They absolutely have to, and pray that Ten Hag works. You heard this with Richard Arnold. You can't tell me that a business needs investment, but you still pay dividends. It makes no sense. So to me, this football club, when we covered it earlier, they've got the only other way of raising immediate revenue is by selling voting shares. If anyone buys non-voting shares in Manchester United, they deserve everything they get. They're worthless. But serious investors wouldn't do that. And with sacrificing voting rights, you sacrifice the ability to take out money. Once the incentive to own Manchester United is gone, the ability to take out money, they'll sell the football club. There's no question.
I completely agree. One thing we will see is that there will be the amount of offers. I think the one thing that will pique their interest is the amount of offers that Chelsea were getting. People that were interested, like Ted Boehly was one of them. You had
there's plenty of
you had so many, but that one in particular was a standing point.
The difference with Chelsea is Chelsea had to be sold quickly. United don't have to be sold.
Because of the government,
right? If a business is in trouble and needs to be sold, and you want to buy it, you let the business bleed, because that desperation increases. It's cruel, but that's that's what happens in the jungle. You don't attack a healthy animal, you attack a wounded one. And so this is the nature of capitalism. And if you're someone wanting to buy Manchester United, because look, even if United finished where Everton finished this season, it still wouldn't do irreparable damage to their brand. It could be recovered relatively quickly within a year or two if you invest properly. So it'll do damage on a micro level, where it affects your ability to raise money. It affects sponsorship revenue and everything if you're dependent upon that, which the cases are. But for multi-billionaires who aren't, they don't care about those things. So I think, I honestly think that they're in a difficult situation.
And that's obviously for ourselves. We want them out, we want them gone. If we have to persist a little bit longer, but still do as Keane mentioned earlier on brilliantly, is about 1958 protesting, where they're not causing physical harm to people. They're causing serious pressure through the protesting. They're going after sponsors in the right way. They're making it so difficult for the Glazers that even for sponsors looking in, potential investors as well, it really will doubt them. And that's something the Glazers can't afford. They can't lose the money. The biggest one obviously is Adidas. They can't afford to lose that money. 75 million a year over 10 years. To some people that might not sound big enough, but to Man United, that 75 million goes into what the Glazers take out. It's so focal to them. And for us, once it dips, that's another season before the Champions League is another one Adidas will look at going, well, we expect sporting success, not just about you selling shirts that is branded to us. We expect this, we expect that, because it will make us want to invest more. Eventually, they'll be like, well, we'll just go and invest somewhere else. And it wouldn't surprise me, because that's, at the end of the day, they make money on the back of what we do. Seeing their brands succeed, seeing Man United succeed is a way for them to do it, and it's just a reflection of that. And hopefully we will again, but under the current ownership and the way things are going, it's extremely unlikely. It's extremely unlikely. We are going to wrap up here though with one last comment, and I think it's absolutely spot on, just to elaborate what Phil said earlier on. And it's this from Shays Samargas. Sorry if I butchered your name. never come across it before. I do apologise. There's really only one option that is most likely someone comes in with at least 5 billion at the most for the Glazers to be tempted to sell, unless we don't hit top 4, then get serious. Exactly. Same wavelength as Phil. Same wavelength. There is 36 people watching currently tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having Phil on. I've spoken to Phil numerous times on different channels, but like, I genuinely love listening to this man.
You're a good kid. Thanks for having me on, lads. Absolute pleasure. And,
It's a pleasure.
Happy to do it anytime.
Thank you. And just for anyone who may have never listened to yourself before or come across you on social media, Twitter, YouTube, even Spotify, on Spotify, where can our viewers find you, Phil? Where can we find
our
you?
podcast Beyond the Pitch is on all those major podcast platforms, and you can find me at Malakans on Twitter. So thanks for all the love, folks.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. For anyone that is watching, please hit that like, share, and subscribe buttons. Beyond the Pitch, all social platforms, Spotify, YouTube. You can find all that. It is one of the best sporting podcasts you can come across. Thank you. And of course, Malakans on Twitter, Malachians. Malakans.
IANS.
Yeah, butchered it in that way. Yeah, Malakans. Right. It's all in the descriptions. Like, even for Follow the Weekly Armchair on Twitter, it's on there as well as one of our pre-proposed tweets in terms of when we put the show up for posting it tonight. You can find it all on there. If you're interested, I don't normally plug my own stuff, so Keane, if you try to kill me, you're not here. If you're interested in like sporting and gaming streams as well, you can find mine and my Twitter is also my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in that stuff, but what matters to us is just building our content, building our channel, like wide variety. For example, Talk of the League. If you're not a Man United fan, you're just watching for fun. The Talk of the League podcast is for any other fan base. So we have like Matt, who's an Everton fan, hosts it for them. Good coverage. We like to expand on that sense. Obviously, on a Friday night, we have an NBA podcast as well. You've got my podcast, which is about wrestling. If you're into that, it's purely for fun, and we just enjoy our content for community base. And if there's anything else you want to see,
where can I find your OnlyFans, Reece?
You can find it on I Don't Do It at www.idon'tcareaboutonlyfans.
You don't have a swingers on OnlyFans, mate? You're missing a trick, kid.
Not my style. Not my style. I tell you, he's a funny bloke. But generally, it's not my style.
I'm out. I'll see you later. Bye, folks.
Pleasure. Thanks, Phil. And for me, it's an absolute pleasure. If you didn't see our intro at the start, you'll see it again as an outro. See you later, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night and enjoy your weekend.